Hey, Namaste. My name is Raghavendra Khare, and recently I come across a very interesting book called The Horse, the Wheel, and the Language by David Anthony. It's an interesting book, and it describes how the migrations from steppe Eurasian region shaped the entire modern world. And that kind of got me thinking, and I started doing some more research on this subject. Last 2 3 months, I've been reading a lot of books and blogs, and I decided to put together one presentation combining all my conclusions. So this is a very long presentation, and I have divided into four parts. The part one will talk about the discovery of the Indus civilization, because this entire Aryan migration issue cannot be concluded in Indian context without talking about the Indus civilization. So we'll talk about the discovery of the civilization and its achievements. Then we move into the Indo-Aryan languages, how this spread and the migration issue. Then we'll talk about the indigenous Aryan theory, which is called as an out of India theory. And then I will conclude my presentation. So this will be in four-part presentation. So let's get started. As far as Indian history is concerned, it is basically split between two political ideologies, the left and right. And the history is written in India through these political lenses. So at one side we have these leftist historians who somehow got the authoritative narrative in Indian history, but the other side is also not very promising. The other side is rather stupid because they claim any nonsense things in the Indian history. So the left and right, as far as India is concerned, and the history is concerned, it's been sandwiched between these two sides. So rather than systematically removing the colonial prejudices, the post-independence historians added an additional layer to that. So they added that Marxist, leftist kind of an twist to the Indian history. And another major problem with the history writing is there is in the light of new evidences, it's not updated. So there is genetic, archaeological, all the new evidences are popping up every day and out, and those new evidences are not published, are not recorded in the history, and the textbooks are written in such a way that they teach the same history as taught in 50 years ago, which is which is a major problem. The evidence is not simply updated. To avoid that bias, I wanted to refer to a very independent sources. So during my research, I did a peer-reviewed papers, which are basically published in the renowned magazines like Nature, Cell, and Science. The research university papers by Vagesh Narasimhan, who is an Harvard professor, Michael Witzel, who is a Sanskrit professor at Harvard University, K. Thangarajan, who is a CSIR chief scientist. I just want to give the credit to all these people because my research is based on the papers written by the gentlemen. So Professor Vasant Shinde, who is the dean of Pune University, Priya Murjani, who is the researcher at University of California, David Rick. David Rick is the person who wrote this book called Who We Are and How We Got There. So I read that book, a very interesting read. And then most important, the book that triggered me to make this presentation is The Horse, the Wheel, and Language. This is a very interesting book by David Anthony. And there are some blogs by Rajiv Khan. There is a web blog called written by Brown Pandits. Kushal Mehra, he has a good podcast. He runs a podcast called Charvak. David Frawley, of course, Wikipedia and academia. So I use these resources rather than going by the ideological driven narrative, you know, taught in our schools. As far as India is concerned, India was always inhabited by pre-Homo sapiens species, hominin species, Homo erectus, right from the very beginning. So 2.5 million years ago to 250,000 years ago, the India was occupied, was inhabited by this hominin kind of a species. Uh, Around 74,000 years ago, something happened. It's called Toba super eruption, a volcanic eruption that happened in Indonesia. It was 5,000 times larger than the Helens eruption that was very famous, which happened in 1980s. It sounds that this explosion was so big that it covered the entire globe by some kind of a volcanic ash, and may have brought the entire human population to extinction. Almost near to the extinction. It suddenly plunged the entire planet into some kind of an ice age, which lasted for around 2,000 years. And if this hypothesis is true, it explains very clearly why there is such a lack of genetic diversity among human population. We are all one Homo sapiens, one human population. You don't see other humans. There were some traces of Neanderthals in Europe and some traces of Homo erectus in rest of the East Asia, but we don't find a lot of diversity when it comes to human species. There is only one human species that lives today, which is Homo sapiens. And so, at around 70,000 years ago, after this Toba explosion, very few individuals, maybe in the range of 500 to 1,000 Homo sapien individuals, survived somewhere in Africa. And because there was scarcity of food, they started migrating. They were basically the hunter gatherers. So it is proposed that from Africa, the multiple waves of these people started migrating towards India and then rest of the world. The first wave probably started from Africa, crossed the Red Sea through Saudi Arabia, and then came via Gujarat into India. And the Indian subcontinent was like a coastal superhighway used by almost all Homo sapiens to go to the other destinations, mainly Indonesia, China. As you can see, this one um, population basically split from Gujarat that went through the central India into the China. One from China split here and went to the Europe, and the other one via the Bangladesh and Indonesia went into the Australia. And how we know that? We have genetic similarity between these groups, human groups, with the African groups. Literally, all populations to the east of India have some kind of a genetic footprint in India. Yeah, it is thought that at around 12,000 years ago, the Earth started warming up. The seasonal changes that brought the last ice age to end, which is basically called as the end of the Holocene period, that brought some seasonal changes to the Earth, and that favored some kind of agriculture revolution. That's even called as a Neolithic revolution, taking root at around 12,000 years ago. It triggered such a change in the society that the way the people lived, like hunter gathering, killing an animal today, eating it for 2 days, and then again next to go and kill another animal. This kind of an hunter gatherer society suddenly started settling at one place, and that is called as the Neolithic Revolution, the agriculture revolution. It happened at first in what is known as today is known as the Middle East, the area covering Iraq, Iran. The fertile it's known as the Fertile Crescent. The rivers, the Euphrates and Tigris, and the banks of this river, the first wild crops such as cereals such as barley and wheat were domesticated, and that triggered the revolution that kind of from 5 million people at around 10,000 BC. Now we have close to 7 billion people on the earth today. So this is a like amazing development in the history of the human population at around 12,000 BC. So these earliest civilizations developed between 4,000 BC to 3,000 BC with the advent of agriculture. So this Neolithic revolution, what is called as an agricultural revolution, started with the first civilization, which is Mesopotamia, which started in Tigris-Euphrates Valley. This Mesopotamia civilization further spread into the Nile Valley, which is like Egypt civilization, and then independently, the another civilization started in the Indus region, which is basically the Harappan civilization, also known as the Indus Saraswati civilization. And at last, the in China, it started with that Huanghe Valley civilization, Yangtze River, or also known as the Elo River civilization. So, what is civilization? The earlier, around 10,000 BC, the people were hunter gatherers. So, what are the characteristics of the civilization? So, what we call as a civilization should have more or less six characteristics. One, it should have large population centers. Then number two, it should have some monumental architecture and art styles, some kind of a shared communication method, a language. Number four is some kind of an administration or an hierarchical structure. Number fifth is the division of labor. The division of labor creates some economic classes. And number six is the division of people that divides the society into some social classes. So, in all these four ancient civilizations, we find six characteristics. So, let's look at the timeline of all these civilizations. So, first we talked about the Mesopotamia, which started in Iraq, present day Iraq. That the mature phase of that civilization is around 3500 BCE. Then it started in ancient Egypt civilization, where we know the pyramids were built. That was started right after Mesopotamia civilization at around 3100 BC, which ended at around 1000 BC. The next to start is Indus civilization, which started it around, and it's not started; it's a mature phase, 2500 BC. When you talk about starting, it started in Meghar, Pakistan. The agriculture started in 7000 BC, so it was far earlier than 2500 BC. But the mature phase, when the entire civilization was completely developed, it's supposed to be starting at 2500 BC, and then the Chinese civilization started at around 700 BC. The and then I know the ancient Greece started around 800 BC. The Rome, as we know it today, started around 500 BC. Then in South America, the American continent, the Mayan culture started around 250 BC. So our focus today is basically the Indus Saraswati civilization. I am intentionally avoiding the word Indus Valley civilization because, as you can see, the spread of the civilization was not only around the Indus River, which is basically the Sindhu River, but it was spread all across eastern side of the Indus River, which was around the Ghagra Hakra, which is known as the Ghagra Hakra River today, but earlier it was known as the Saraswati River. So I prefer to call it Indus Saraswati civilization because this entire civilization, if you look at the western boundary, was all the way up to eastern Afghanistan, what is known as the Sukta Jandor. We have found a site there. Then on the eastern boundary, we have the Rakhigarhi, which is the biggest archaeological site found to of this Indus-Saraswati civilization. On the southern side, we have this Daimabad, Maharashtra, in Nagar district, and on the northern side, we have this Shortugul, a place near Hindu Kush Mountains in the northwestern Afghanistan. The five major regional centers, though this entire area was spread across the northwestern boundary of India, which covers the present-day Afghanistan, Pakistan, and the some part of Punjab and Gujarat. There were mainly five major regional urban centers. One was Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, which were located on the banks of the Indus civilization, and then we have Ganveriwala and Rakhigarhi, which were located in the Saraswati. Saraswati is now a dried up region, but you can see all the civilization, Kalibangan, Banwali, all the civilizations were located around that Saraswati river. And in the western side, we have Dholavira and Lothal in the Indian state of Gujarat. There is some interesting story behind this whole discovery of Harappan or Indus Saraswati civilization. In around 1850, they were building the railway track between Multan and Lahore, and they found some bricks there. And this entire 100-mile track was supported by the Harappan bricks. Uh, and then the then director of ASI, the Archaeological Survey of India, Alexander Cunningham, he started excavating, and they found this entire civilization. The earlier historical view of Indian history was the Indian history was supposed to be around 300, 500 BC at the time of Buddha, and with this one discovery, this entire history of the civilization uh, was brought back by another 3,000 years. Just one stroke uh, of discovery, this entire Indian civilization or in the Indian history was brought back by 3,000 years. So what they found here is very interesting. When they started digging, excavating this whole region, they found that it is spread in a long area with a very bricked structures. This has got amazing architectural achievements. The quality of the similarity of the municipal town planning, as you can see through this entire city of Mohenjo-daro, it indicates some kind of a town planning, and these communities had some method of coordinated administration, but we don't really know what kind of administration that it had. Their streets were laid out like a modern towns, all on a similar rectangular grid pattern. Mud bricks were used to build houses on either side of the streets, usually on stone foundations. Each site appears to have had some kind of a controlled supply and elaborate drainage system. As you can see, the sanitary practices of this Harappan and Mohenjo-daro, an entire Indus Saraswati civilization, were very, very advanced for that time. And each site appears to have some kind of a reservoirs for rainfall collection and storage, which was very unique when you compare those to the civilizations at that time. Also, their sewage and wastage systems was unique. They had access to the water. Each and every home had some kind of a well with an access to the water. They had baths with drains. The bathroom drains were leading into the underground sewers and septic jars, and some of the sewers had some inspection hole for maintenance, which kind of indicates that they had some kind of an administration to do the maintenance work and town planning on these cities. Yeah. One of the most advanced invention by this Indus Saraswati civilization people were the flush toilets. The modern flush toilets appeared first in the Roman Empire back in like um, some 500 AD, but 3000 BC, the 3000, 4000 years before the Roman Empire, there were first flush toilets were built in the Indus Valley civilization, which is one of the greatest achievements of this people. It sounds like they had a very good sanitary practices back then. Some more achievements or inventions by these people. They had a jewelry, which is a sign of some kind of a prosperity there. They had some games like dice, some chess. All these things were discovered during the excavations in Rakhigarhi, in Kalibangan, in Mohenjo-daro, in Harappa. They had a very standardized weight and scale system. So it looks like they were a very trading kind of people. They also found some figurines of the ships, so which kind of indicates that they knew how to navigate through the seas and rivers, which again is an indication of an advanced civilization. When I say advanced, I don't really mean the advance in the sense of what we say today, but given the time frame that we're talking about, the context of time that we're talking about 5,000 years ago, these kind of inventions were pretty modern for that time. It looks like they had some kind of an writing system, and the most unfortunate part of this whole civilization is we have not been able to decipher the Indus script. There were some 4,000 inscribed objects. Some of them are found in Mesopotamia, in Egypt. So it looks like these guys used to travel from Mesopotamia. They have 417 distinct signs in specific patterns, and this is kind of a very mute civilization. It doesn't talk to us through the letters. You know what happened in Mesopotamia, what happened in Egypt. After some times, like they could decipher this whole language and they could know sure what exactly was happening in that time. But Indus is completely mute. Such a big civilization, 5 million people living in one part, and we don't know what they were eating, how they used to talk, what their culture was, what their religion was. All we are left with some kind of a speculation based on what kind of excavations, what kind of figurines we find from that region. It also sounds like they had some kind of a trading route through India into the Egypt and Mesopotamia, because some of the inscriptions were found in Middle East, like in Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, and all throughout the Egypt civilization. And if you decipher the Mesopotamian civilization, they used to call this entire Indus civilization region as a Meluha. That's a different name given by these people to the people from the Indus civilization, Meluha. And if you look at the trade paths, it looks like from the Gangetic Plain, they used to travel through Khyber Pass and then travel through the Iranian plateau and enter the Mesopotamia. And since we have found some ports, not like a modern port, but some kind of a port like structure in Lothal in Gujarat, it sounds like these guys used to, and coupled with the figurines that we found for of ships, it sounds like these guys used to travel from Gujarat into the through the Persian Gulf into the Mesopotamian civilizations, which was pretty modern for that kind of period. As far as the religion of that particular civilization is concerned, as we cannot decipher the whole language, it looks like there is pretty much resemblance to present Hinduism. Worship of fertility gods. There are some figurines found like a meditative Pashupati, Shiva figurine. There are some cows. There are some oxes figurines, the goddesses, as you can see. And the most important finding is the swastika symbol. Now, as we know, the swastika symbol is considered very auspicious. Hinduism, it sounds like there is a cultural continuity from the Indus civilization into the into the Vedic civilization, and then into the Gangetic civilization that appeared later on the eastern part of the India. Again, some more figures, which we don't know. They are considered some kind of a priestly figures, gods and goddesses. Animal worship seems commonplace throughout the culture, and the fertility goddesses worship seems commonplace throughout the culture. These are some more inscription. As you can see, a very unique style of writing, and they have certain symbols which are not found anywhere else in the world. And like I said, anyone who could decipher this could be the greatest invention of the century. You know, it's been the question of this language or the script is lingering in an archaeological world for last 100 years since the discovery of this civilization. There are some other mysterious signifiers. There are multitude of clay seals, and there is something written about it, but we don't know what it is. some more figurines possibly found in the eastern side of this civilization, around Kalibangan, around Rakhigarhi, in Dholavira, in Lothal. Some kind of a Shiva Linga figurines were also found. Not exactly sure whether they were Shiva or some other deity, we don't know. The infinity symbol, like you say here, which is used in present day Hinduism very often in various fire worship rituals, was also found there. One of the interesting finding was this fire altar, which is found in Kalibangan. This sounds to be around 2000 BC old, and this is an interesting finding because it is proposed that the fire worship ritual and this kind of Vedic rituals were uh, came to Indus civilization at a later date, but the discovery of this kind of fire altars is a significant when it's found in the Indus civilization. After flourishing for around 3000 years, this civilization came to an end around 2000 BC to 1800 BC, and no one knows what caused the decline of the Indus civilization, which is the greatest mystery of the century in an archaeological words. Possible reasons could be the flooding of the Indus River, maybe the Sindhu River flow flooded and it completely collapsed the civilization. It could be possible that some kind of a climate change cause long-term drought and famine. If scientifically also this kind of supports the climate change theory, because um, we know that around 2000 BC there was like 100 years of drought and famine all across the globe. So this could have triggered the people to move from this part into some other parts in India. Famine and drought, we talked about that. The Indus River might have changed its course, and that is also possible looking at the satellite images of the river. It sounds that some of the parts of the Indus River have changed its course during 2000 BC. It is also proposed that they had some kind of a dams built in that region, and those dams collapsed and flooded the entire region. That could be one of the possibilities. And natural disasters such as earthquakes could have caused the decline. And the last, which is being very controversial, the Aryan invasion. The people from Eurasian region entered the region and drove some people out from there, is what is proposed initially. This has been debunked so many times and with so many conclusive proofs in academics. It's not even discussed today. The Aryan invasion is not discussed. Still, some history books, some textbooks in India, especially in Tamil Nadu, they talk about the Aryan invasion, and we will deal into detail of this subject, Aryan migration and Aryan invasion, into part two. Thank you for watching the part one. Thank you.